Jesus said one day he will return. Every man, woman, and child will meet him either as Savior or Judge. Are you ready? Listen to VCY America Daily for programming that will change your life forever.
VCY America is on the air. KVCX Gregory, WVIW Bridgeport. Online at vcyamerica.org.
History was made on today's date. Stay tuned for an American Minute with Bill Federer.
4 years before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock, William Shakespeare died on this day, April 23, 1616. His 37 plays have impacted world literature. He married Anne Hathaway, had 3 children, moved to London, and became shareholding director of the Globe Theatre, writing such classics as Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, and A Midsummer Night's Dream. Shakespeare wrote in his will, "I commend my soul into the hands of God, my Creator, hoping and assuredly believing, through the only merits of Jesus Christ, my Savior, to be made partaker of life everlasting."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Friends, thank you for joining us on Crosstalk, coming your way from VCY America. This past January 29th, a few months ago, we had Robert Knight on our program with the topic, Elections Have Consequences, and we focused primarily on the state of Virginia with the change that took place in state leadership there and the ramifications that were happening, and my, oh my, are we seeing it. As you know, this past Monday on Crosstalk, our guest was Ken Cuccinelli, the former Attorney General of Virginia, who warned about this vote that was coming up the next day, this past Tuesday, pertaining to a mass gerrymandering of Virginia. He indicated the state is near a 50-50 split with a Democratic edge right now and has 6 blue congressional districts and 5 red congressional districts, and indicated that there was a push from the left to make it 10 blue districts and 1 red district. Well, less than 48 hours ago, as votes were tallied, the unofficial results indicated that the gerrymandered maps narrowly won. And since that legal action has also now begun, a judge has halted the results from being certified. Why should this matter, and how does this impact the nation as a whole? Well, joining us today, we welcome Robert Knight. Bob is a former Los Angeles Times news editor and columnist for the Washington Times, as well as for other publications. He has had senior positions in a number of pro-family organizations and has written several books, like The Coming Communist Wave, What Happens If the Left Captures All 3 Branches of Government, Liberty on the Brink, Crooked, What Really Happened in the 2020 Election and How to Stop the Fraud, and The Battle for America's Soul, in which he provides 10 steps to restore freedom. Bob, thanks for joining us here today on Crosstalk.
Always good to be on with you, Jim.
So you were with us this last January, and here we find out once again the elections do have consequences, do they not?
Well, they're huge in Virginia, but I think they're nationwide.
Yes.
Because if this holds, and it's not certain it will, the judge ruled against or issued an injunction holding up enforcement of it because they broke the rules when they engineered this constitutional amendment on the ballot, and the very wording of the referendum was so misleading. That's another legal challenge. The case was before the Virginia Supreme Court, which declined to rule before the election and said, well, we'll probably rule after it, which is, please, after millions of dollars were spent, in fact, something like more than $80 million were spent in this campaign, most of it by the Democrats, who raised virtually all of it from out of the state. Several big groups, including one run by Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader in the U.S. House right now, one led by George Soros, and I'm sure the listeners have heard of Mr. Soros, who funds every left-wing scheme and group out there.
Yeah.
But getting back to the result, it almost was defeated. It was like 50.3% to 48 point.
Yeah, 51 point.
I mean, it was very close.
Yeah.
It's within a couple percentage points. It could have gone either way. The Democrats did pour in many millions of dollars more. I even saw an ad during the Masters golf tournament.
Wow.
Encouraging us to vote yes. It was President Obama saying so. But this is scary because the U.S. House is on a knife's edge right now. The Democrats want to take it back, and this is giving them a big boost to do that.
You know, Bob, I do want to read the wording of the amendment because the first time I read it, Bob, I actually went to the website. Is this a Babylon Bee writing of this? And I found out. I was shocked. It was not made up wording. This is the actual wording, and it says this: should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness in the upcoming elections while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting process resumes for all future redistricting after the 2030 census. And in essence, I read that first time. I said, that can't be true, but that's what the wording was. And Bob, in essence, this gives the Virginia legislature put a parenthesis into our law, redraw the districts for 2026 midterm elections and for the next congressional district, and then after that next census, then we'll return to what our law says here in the state of Virginia.
Yeah, the voters 6 years ago passed, they didn't want something like this to happen, so by a two-thirds majority, they passed a law establishing an independent commission to draft congressional districts, and they did a good job because it reflects the vote. I mean, President Trump got 46% of the vote in Virginia last time around. Mm-hmm. And the split, as you said, Jim, was 6 Democrats, 5 Republican seats, which mirrors pretty much the Democratic versus Republican vote. But now they're saying to ensure fairness, it has to be 10-1. And if you look at some of these districts, they're laughable. They're farmers and small-town people in central Virginia, like places like Goochland, who will now be outvoted and really disenfranchised by federal bureaucrats living right across the Potomac River in Arlington and Alexandria.
I've seen some of the responses. They said this new map looks like an octopus, or was some compared it to a lobster-like look.
Yeah, it looks like a lobster with a long tail, real slim tail that reaches way up into the deep blue areas of Fairfax County and Arlington County. It's indefensible in terms of fairness. But if you ask Democrats, they will say, well, look, we're only doing this to counter what happened in Texas. President Trump asked Texas to come up with more Republican seats to solidify the majority before the 2026 midterms. So Texas went ahead and did so, and that's probably going to ensure 4 or 5 more Republican seats. Not for sure, but it might. And then California countered that by wiping out about 4 Republican seats at least, and other states have followed suit. But Virginia is the most blatant gerrymandering. It's the most blatant misuse of language on the ballot. I'm hoping the courts will overturn this. It's just so unfair.
And it's very interesting to look at this, Bob, because the Virginia primary is just a little over 3 months away. I believe it's August 4th. And prior to that, candidates need to begin circulating papers, and there's a lot of planning and strategy and committees that are being sent up that if these maps are held up, that totally changes the perspective of those who are seeking election.
Yeah, this is one thing that the lawsuit against the referendum cited, that it violates the timing established by law. So this doesn't happen so close to an election, it throws everything off. But they just ignored that and rammed it right through.
They would like to just look at 4 arguments that were made against this. I'm looking at Election Transparency Initiative Bob, and that's headed up by their chair, Ken Cuccinelli. And they said the first challenge is the amendment process. The first passage was during the special session, and the fact that they did this during a special session is called for a specific purpose, and you have to deal with that purpose. You can't take up other things during a special session. Yep. And so here they had convened for budget purposes, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, they put this into it. It had nothing to do with the budget.
Yeah, they don't care about the rules. This is all about power grabbing. And to illustrate it further, the lengths they went, this is from a opinion piece in today's Washington Post. Said the Justice for Democracy PAC, that was a huge PAC that poured in millions, aired commercials declaring, quote, black and brown voices, unquote, will be silenced.
My.
And they also sent mailers of Klansmen in white hoods to black neighborhoods.
Oh, my.
I mean, this is race baiting. It's hateful. And apparently it worked.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently, and I was just on the state's website here before the program. They show 51.46% to 48.54%, a difference of less than 90,000 votes out of more than 3 million votes cast. And, Bob, I'd like to just play here. I've got just a 48-second clip from former President Obama. You mentioned his weighing in on this, and he probably recorded many spots, but here is one of them.
Hey, Virginia. Early voting is underway, and Virginians are turning out in record numbers to vote yes. By voting yes, you have a chance to do something important, not just for the Commonwealth, but for our entire country. By voting yes, you can push back against the Republicans trying to give themselves an unfair advantage in the midterms. By voting yes, you can take a temporary step to level the playing field. And we're counting on you. Early voting is happening right now. Election Day is on April 21st. So go to iwillvote.com/VA to find your closest polling location. Make a plan, show up, and vote yes, Virginia.
Yeah, so there he is, Bob, speaking, and, take this temporary step to level the playing field. By temporary, it's like circumvent Virginia law right now and pass this now, and your law will return back after, next couple of election cycles.
Yeah, that's what they say. You can't even guarantee that.
Right.
And by the way, talk about a level playing field, because Democrats insist on counting non-citizens in the U.S. Census and then basing congressional districts on them, that accounts for something like a 14-seat swing at the national level. This empowers districts that aid and abet the illegal aliens, like sanctuary cities. They end up with more representation by breaking the law. I mean, that's the kind of thing that ought to stop.
You mentioned also the second argument from Cuccinelli is the lack of required intervening election, and saying that a constitutional amendment must be referred to the General Assembly at its first regular session following the next general election of members of the House of Delegates. And he is saying, Bob, that requirement was not met as the first passage occurred during an election rather than prior to an intervening election. And just saying, procedurally, this thing, it doesn't hold up. I really don't understand why your Supreme Court in Virginia would not even take it up, because these things leading up to the vote itself showed that it was not handled properly.
Well, you got to wonder, Jim.
Yeah.
Every time I see a court punt on a very important issue where they could have clearly ruled the right way, and it's a head scratcher, dark thoughts enter my mind. Well, who's got something on them? I mean, that occurred to me when the U.S. Supreme Court okayed Obamacare, and John Roberts did a pretzel twist in his own opinion, turning Obamacare into a tax just to make it legal. And it didn't make a lick of sense legally, and yet it was done. And I kept thinking, okay, there's something else going on here. And I'm not a conspiracy guy, but when I see things that don't make sense, it raises questions.
Indeed it does. Robert Knight with us here today, and we're talking about the Virginia gerrymandered maps now being challenged, and the judge has put a hold on certifying the results as of this point. But we'll come back with more information on this, and friends, also be ready to jot down some information. Bob has written on items just like this in his columns, and we'll tell you how you can get his columns free every week and stay abreast on so many issues, hearing a perspective that you're not going to get from the gerrymandered media. We'll be back in just a minute. We'll be back here on Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, author and seminar speaker with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, today's a heavy topic. Is there a scientific explanation for suicide bombers?
Chris, our world today is on edge because of a suicidal terrorist. Since evolution claims to be a theory of everything, there must be an evolutionary explanation for even this self-destructive behavior. And sure enough, some evolutionists are now saying that suicidal tendencies are a variation of an evolutionary adaptation that was previously useful in some evolutionary sense. Creationists just stand back and wonder how they can be so misguided, so deceived. The Bible says that man was created initially in a very good state, in the image of God. Yet when Adam rebelled against God's order, creation was permanently distorted, and now we live in a world dominated by sin's ruinous effects. Chris, so you see, what began back in Genesis continues today, even with suicidal bombers.
Thanks, Dr. Morris.
Robert Knight, our guest here today on Crosstalk, and talking about the vote that just happened in Virginia and immediately went to court challenge. And as Bob pointed out, the court had opportunity beforehand even to deal with these merits or lack of merit for this to go on. Bob, there was one more here about a 90-day requirement, as the Virginia Constitution requires amendments be submitted to voters no sooner than 90 days after the final or second passage. And Bob, what it boils down to, there was only about 45 days that this went notice before it got to the voters.
What's the Constitution, Jim? I mean,
Sadly,
when you're seeking naked power, really, this really shouldn't stand in court.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen strange things happen in courts, and people should hope and pray that the courts look at this and say, this isn't kosher. This isn't right. They broke the rules. They shouldn't get away with it.
Yeah. And then, of course, the other challenge to the maps is the contiguity and requirement. And as you pointed out, this looks more like a lobster now, with its long tail and so forth, and just doesn't seem to meet muster with the laws of the state of Virginia.
Yeah, that term gerrymander came from a delegate named Jerry in Massachusetts who rigged districts. So they were so bizarre they look like a salamander, so they dubbed it gerrymander, and we've had that term ever since. And this does look like a lobster. I'm looking right at it now. It's got two big claws. One reaches out way west and one way down south to the center of Virginia, and then a little bitty thing going all the way up to Alexandria. It's absurd.
Yeah.
But I will say this, Jim, the game isn't over. This doesn't mean the Democrats will take back the U.S. House in November. A lot of things can happen. For one thing, there are seats up for grabs in other states.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans are going to pick one up in Missouri, two more in Ohio, in North Carolina. Florida is set to redistrict. Right now, it looks like it'll either be a wash or the Democrats may gain a seat or two. But what's really important is what happens in the economy and the war in Iran to determine the election coming up.
Mm-hmm. Is what Virginia did different, though, than what Texas or Florida or other red states have done?
Only to the extent that they broke the law doing it. Texas did do some gerrymandering from what I've seen. I've seen that one district that looks curious in its composition, but I don't think they defied their own constitution the way Virginia's Democrats did.
Mm-hmm. Bob, as a matter of fact, you your column that you wrote just recently, you wrote, "Will Maryland and Virginia become one-party states?" Because Maryland is similarly doing the very same thing. And what was your main point with that column?
Well, the point was that Virginia, for years, people fled Maryland because it's a high-tax, high-regulation state, and they'd go over the border to Virginia and they'd get relief. But now with the Abigail Spanberger regime in charge and the Democrats controlling both houses of the legislature, they are pushing through new taxes, gun laws, all kinds of weird things, LGBTQ proposals. And so Virginia is coming to resemble Maryland, so there's no escape. But also the Democrats were trying to get rid of the one last Republican seat in Maryland. They have 8 congressional seats. 7 of them are Democrats. 1 was Republican and still is. It's on the eastern shore of Maryland, which has traditionally been conservative. And it's held by Andy Harris, who is the House of Representatives conservative caucus chairman. They wanted to get rid of him for obvious reasons. But to their credit, some Senate Democrats in the state House of Maryland said, no, this is breaking our procedural rules, and we're just not going to do it. So they actually stuck by their Constitution and said that rushing that through was no good. So anyway, it's not going to happen in Maryland.
This is,
at least this year.
Yeah. And this vote that happened Tuesday, though, this was really an anti-Trump vote, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. They made it an anti-Trump vote. I mean, there were yard signs all over the place. Stop Trump, vote yes. And didn't even explain it was about gerrymandering the state. It was just, hey, you want to stop Trump? Vote yes. They have ginned up so much hatred against Donald Trump that I truly think that millions of people do have TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and they will vote against their own interests. They will get agitated easily. Of course, President Trump makes it easy. He's a provocateur. He says things I wish he wouldn't say. But if you look at his policies, my goodness, what a turnaround from the Biden years. Opioid overdoses have dropped by almost half. The border is secure. We finally took out the nuclear threat in Iran. There are tax cuts, and everybody's seeing them in their tax refunds. They're undoing bad policies in the Department of Education. You could make a very long list of all the good things happening that most people would agree with, even independents and Democrats, and yet they hate Trump so much they can't wait to punish him somehow.
Right. By the way, Bob, I just mentioned the other column you wrote, and every week you're putting out a new column. We'll talk about another one here as well, but how is it our listeners can get your columns? You offer those free of charge, correct?
Oh, yeah. They just come out every Monday morning, and I just send them to one list, and there's no spamming or charge or anything. If you send me an email, and my email address is robertknight4, that's K-N-I-G-H-T, robertknight4, the numeral 4, at gmail.com, and just put sign me up in the subject line. You don't have to write me a letter or do anything beyond that. It'd be nice if you include your name, just so I can put you in the list. But it's real easy. Just robertknight4 at gmail.com.
And friends, again, in the subject line, just put in "sign me up," and you'll get perspectives you're not going to get from the legacy media, or as I called it before, the gerrymandered media. You won't get that perspective. You're going to hear a conservative perspective on so many different issues. But all you have to do is send an email to Robert Knight. That's K-N-I-G-H-T, the number 4, robertknight4 at gmail.com. And just put in the words, sign me up, in the subject line, and Bob will know what to do. Just, you want your columns? Again, that's robertknight4 at gmail.com, and just say, sign me up. Bob, concerning this vote on Tuesday, though, immediately challenged the former AG of Virginia, said the yes vote has won Virginia's redistricting referendum, but the legal fight is just beginning. And a judge has indeed ruled that the results are invalid, and he has blocked the certification.
Yeah, this is the same judge in Tazewell, Virginia, that blocked it first time around, and then the case went to the Virginia Supreme Court, and they just punted on it. So he's come back and said, look, this thing's still illegal, so I'm issuing an injunction. And it's on several grounds that we've mentioned about how they violated the Constitution and the rules for the election, and also the wording, based on the idea that it's illegal to have a misleading referendum explanation, and this is absolutely misleading, that it would restore fairness to Virginia's elections.
Right.
Come on. So from evenly split to 9-1, or I mean, that's
10-1,
ridiculous.
Yeah.
10-1. Sorry,
Yeah.
It's even worse than I thought.
And so we have, and again, Bob, you were with us in January. Elections have consequences, and now the current Attorney General, Jay Jones, said, I'm going to file immediately. He's going to file this appeal, and he posted this. He said, Virginia voters have spoken, and an activist judge should not have veto power over the people's vote.
Well, an activist judge or a Democrat complaining about activist judges is rich, as you know, Jim.
Yes. Yeah.
They've got their share, and they run to the courts whenever the people vote something they don't like. And we've denounced judicial tyranny for years and seen it. And but you know, Jay Jones is a guy who actually threatened the Republican House Speaker a few years ago, openly wishing he would die and be killed in front of his wife and kids. And yet he got elected.
Yeah.
This is what, we were scratching our heads. We thought, okay, they didn't do a very good gubernatorial campaign. Spanberger got in, okay. But Jay Jones got elected over a really good guy, Jason Miyares, who's been an excellent attorney general. I have to think there was vote fraud involved. I really do. It's just so easy to commit. And I know an election official in Virginia who was presiding over, was election supervisor in a district, and said they let us take the ballots home in boxes. And she said, I'm honest. I'm not going to touch them, but boy, it would be easy to tamper with these.
Wow.
The chain of custody is ridiculous. So I can't imagine what happened in the more urban districts of Virginia. Well, President Trump has, without evidence, as the Washington Post likes to say, has already concluded there was vote fraud in Virginia, because a lot of votes seem to come in at the last minute, pushing the Democrats' position up, which often happens somehow.
Yeah, it often happens, and I know that there are other states like Illinois who are really watching, what's happened with Virginia as well, and Illinois being another state that is quite gerrymandered.
Yeah, it is, and maybe you can tell me what happened in Wisconsin with the Supreme Court.
Well,
I don't understand why people would want more liberals on the Supreme Court.
It is really baffling, Bob. It is so baffling. Wisconsin electing one of the most conservative members of the U.S. Senate, Ron Johnson, and also electing one of the most liberal members on the U.S. Senate, and Tammy Baldwin, an open lesbian. And here we have, the same rhetoric that's happening in our Supreme Court races, where they are actually advocating for positions on abortion. We need to, protect a woman's right to choose and vote for me. And one of them was actually, an activist with Planned Parenthood who now is going to be seated, won the election, and is going to be seated on the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Talk about the fox in that you can coop. Not just guarding it, but right inside.
Right inside.
Great. I don't know what it is. I think people have this weird notion that you have to balance everything, and I don't think so. I think there are times you have to resist and oppose what you think is wrong. And we've got a way to determine what's right and wrong, and that's the Bible.
Yes.
And this is what sets progressives apart from a lot of other people. In fact, and I want to recommend this, Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, wrote a positively brilliant essay in the Wall Street Journal that said the Declaration of Independence is completely incompatible with progressivism. And here's his simple argument. Progressives don't believe in God. so they make up the rules as they go along. They believe that government creates rights, not God. They don't come from God like the Declaration of Independence declares. And once you arrive at that premise, you can do anything you want.
Right.
You can abort babies. You can redefine marriage. You can just exert tyranny over people. So progressivism is fundamentally at odds with our founding documents.
Robert Knight is with us today on Crosstalk, and friends, our phone line is open. We're going to introduce another topic momentarily, but you can call in right now on this issue, 800-733-9829. We'll be right back.
Are you discouraged? Have you given up hope? In such times, it's so important to go to the Scriptures. Remember the story of Zechariah and Elizabeth? How God remembered them and kept His promises? Best-selling author Robert Morgan has taken a deep dive into Scripture around the birth of the Messiah to help us discover the glorious, victorious life that awaits us in Christ. In his book, God Hasn't Forgotten You, Robert provides 24 God lessons that will impact your life, helping you understand that God is at work both in and through you. God works grace into our grief, even turning misery into ministry. The hardcover book, God Hasn't Forgotten You, is available for a donation of $17 or more when you call VCY. 1-800-729-9829.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Robert Knight is with us today. Folks, he's put out some books like Liberty on the Brink, Crooked, What Really Happened in the 2020 Election, and How to Stop the Fraud, and other books as well. You'll find them on his website. A little bit different. His website is roberthknight.com. roberthknight.com. If you'd like to receive his weekly columns, you can just send him an email and just say, sign me up. And you send the email to Robert Knight, and Knight is spelled with a K, K-N-I-G-H-T, Robert Knight, the number 4, at gmail.com, and just say, sign me up. And you're encouraged to do that. And again, friends, you'll get a fresh perspective on what's going on, totally different than what you're going to read and see from the legacy media. Let's go to the phone lines here today. Our number 800-733-9829. We've got Jim calling from North Dallas, Texas. Jim, you're on the air.
Hello there, Jim. How are you this afternoon?
We're doing well, thank you.
Good. I just want to call and tell you that the last Democrat I voted for was a guy named Harry Truman. And I lived in Independence, Missouri for a while. I drove by his house. I would say, Mr. President, hello. He yelled back, my name's Harry. He didn't want all that falderall. Anyway, what I called about today was there is no Democratic Party in America. There is now the Communist Party in America, and we've got to get rid of it. I want to thank my friend Robert, my friend Bob, for my ham radio friend, for telling me about your show. I'm here every day listening to your show. God bless you, sir, and keep the good work. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the call. And Bob, he talked about a change that's taken place there, and we're just seeing a rise in the term that is called democratic socialist.
Yeah, in years past, if somebody said, oh, the Democrats are now communists, it would have just been an epithet. It would have been a way to smear them. But, as a guy with a political science degree, I have to say it's actually descriptive at this point. You look at New York's mayor, Zoran Mamdani, unabashed communist. He calls himself a socialist, but he's a communist. He's used Marx's rhetoric and everything. And he's an Islamist as well. So he's anti-Israel, but he's all about collectivism. That's what communism is. It's collectivism, where there are really no individual rights that come from God. They're whatever the government decides to give you. And that's a very dangerous place, and that's where the Democratic Party is today, I'm afraid.
Our phone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. Tom is calling from Port Wing, Wisconsin. Hi, Tom, you're on the air.
Good afternoon. I have a quick comment and then a question for Robert Knight. My quick comment is the last two Supreme Court justices were elected by 271,000 votes approximately. When Donald Trump won and Scott Walker won, they won by approximately 30,000 votes. That makes me question the legitimacy of those last two Supreme Court justices. Here's my comment, though, or a question. In Wisconsin, the Supreme Court is not the determining factor in gerrymandering. It's the spoils of victory. The majority party, the Republicans, who have lost their will to exert their power, are allowing the Supreme Court to make those decisions on gerrymandering. It is the purview of the Republican majority to decide district redistricting. So they seem to have lost their way in the wilderness.
Tom, thank you for that. And he's referring, Bob, here to the Wisconsin Supreme Court in that it was set up as far as the majority party is the one who sets the districts, and it gets passed through the legislative process. And yet the Supreme Court intervened and said, no, you redraw the maps or we're going to do it. And basically, rather than stand up and fight for that principle, there was surrender there. And as a result, we're seeing our state districts that have been moved about, and now there's a challenge to Wisconsin's congressional districts as well. And whether or not the Supreme Court will take that issue up remains to be seen.
Yeah, you have to scratch your head and wonder what will it take for the Republicans to fight for their people as if it's a war, the way the Democrats fight. And I don't mean fighting dirty. I don't mean smearing people. I mean fighting like your lives and your children's lives and their future depend on it. I really would like to see the same urgency. And we didn't see it in Virginia. Democrats outspent Republicans maybe 4 or 5 to 1 to shove this referendum through. And even the arguments they presented were carefully worded, and they lacked fire. They lacked the kind of thing that gets people out of their houses and to vote. So I'm sorry to hear that going on in Wisconsin, because Scott Walker did such a great job. He turned back so many bad policies. And from what I see, unless they do something different, all of that good stuff is going to be overturned in the coming years.
Right.
So people better wake up. I mean, do you really want to live under a collectivist system?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no good example of that anywhere succeeding.
And what we see here, too, is voter turnout is always light in our spring election for Supreme Court, and a shame to the voters. Lines are packed here. Let's go to Aaron in London, Kentucky. And, Aaron, you're on the air.
Yeah, good show so far. Appreciate it. This state of Kentucky where I'm at, and it's a Commonwealth state as well. I'm wondering if they're having an easier time finding these loopholes to be able to work against our government here in our Commonwealth states. But Beshear is the governor here. But I remember, because I went out and voted, when we voted, most of the state here in Kentucky votes Republican. And all of the majority of the positions in the state went Republican. But yet, which tells me that on the ticket, most people just pushes the elect button that elects all of the people in one side or the other. And by all of the positions dominantly going Republican, why is it that the governor's position doesn't, and it goes Democratically? So that's mind-boggling to me, how the Beshear got in there. And he's right. We do have to, as Republicans, we got to figure out. He says we don't need to play dirty, but we need to figure out all the ways that the Democratic Party, which is, like the guy said, communist, because they're working so hard at getting their way, we got to fight to figure out those dirty screws to be able to combat them. That's where we're at right now in America. We got to figure out all those dirty screws and fight against them.
Aaron, thank you so much for your call here. And Bob, you just wrote about Kentucky recently too on your website, and Governor Beshear.
Yeah, I did. Governor Beshear is a wolf in sheep's clothing. He talks Christianese, and he looks like a nice guy and everything, but I believe he vetoed a bill that would have allowed Christian counselors to talk people out of homosexuality. This conversion therapy that a lot of states have banned. Mm-hmm. He's completely on the side of the whole LGBTQ thing. I'm not sure where he stands on abortion. It usually goes hand in hand with that because it's not life affirming, it's not God affirming, and usually when you find out one or two positions that people hold on the social issues, they pretty much line up either way. And I don't understand why the people of Kentucky have reelected Andy Beshear and consider him a great representative of their values when he really doesn't share them.
Yeah, and he has vetoed a language that the GOP passed in the state to have further restrictions on abortions, but he also is a very vocal proponent of abortion access, and so
yep.
That's where he stands.
And yet he keeps getting elected. I just some of this falls on the Republicans. They're not clarifying the difference between the parties enough.
Yeah.
They're afraid to make it as stark as it needs to be, and so people seem confused, and then they'll vote for other reasons. Like, well, he's a handsome guy, he looks like a nice guy. I guess he's a family man. I'll vote for him. and they'll decide on that basis if you don't give them a good reason not to.
Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. I just looked up the voter turnout for the Supreme Court election in the state, and it appears that 2/3 of the voters stayed home. 2/3 of the voters stayed home. Just less than a third that actually came out to the polls. So, let's go to Alva in New York City. Alva, you're on the air.
Hi, I just want to say that I live in New York, and we recently had Mondani. And my husband and I were self-employed, and we're like upper middle class, I would say. And I must say that this guy is basically stripping us of home ownership, of our rights, and the city council is complicit with him because they're changing things, and no one here in New York knows what's going on. It's so frightening. They're unaware. People are walking around oblivious. They don't know what's happening right underneath their noses. And it's scary. I mean, I feel like my whole livelihood is on the line, and we're hardworking. We've inherited stuff, such generational wealth. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what's going to happen with my kids. I'll be honest with you. I don't know where they're going to be.
Yeah.
They're going to inherit anything. We don't even know where to go. Do we go to another state? If so, what happens if there's a different governor? Where do you run to? It's frightening.
Yeah.
It's so dark and demonic.
Alva, thank you for sharing that. Bob, your thoughts?
Yeah. Mondami came across as this nice guy who just wanted to be fair to everybody and make everything more affordable. But you look at his past statements, you look at what he's up to already and the people he's appointed, and they are straight communist and Islamist. He's got some really radical people he hangs out with, like Hassan Piker, who said that one of the greatest catastrophes of the 20th century was the collapse of the Soviet Union. He's totally anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, just holding all sorts of indefensible positions. He prefers Hamas and Hezbollah over Israel. And to have a guy like this, like Mondani, elected in New York City, makes you wonder how many people are left paying attention anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're pointing out, Alva, is because, I mean, here he's talking about, the free child care that's going to cost millions of dollars to you, and the city-run grocery stores, and Alva, you're going to be impacted too.
Yeah, and it's not only that. You know what? We live in an upper-middle-class area, and I got to tell you, we're finding mosques being built in our area. People are buying multi-million-dollar homes. Like people that are like 35 years old just came here from I don't know where. knocking these homes down and building these monstrosities. They've restructured the zoning laws where I live, which over here, the houses are like 5,000 square feet at least starting. Now they're able to knock down and build multi-unit family homes and mosques everywhere where this is not a neighborhood of where you would have that. So I don't understand where they're getting the money. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. It's crazy.
Thank you. It is crazy. Thank you, Alva, for the call. Up against a break. We'll come back with more of your phone calls. Robert Knight is with us. And, friends, we'll give you out that email address where you can sign up for his weekly emails and get his columns, writing on so many critical issues. We'll be back, though, with more of your calls in 1 minute.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Would you do me a favor? Would you write down 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 through 11? That's 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 through 11. Go study those this week. I hope it'll encourage you. You know, the Bible actually says there that when you have promotion, it comes from the Lord. But we have to humble ourselves under his mighty hand, and he'll exalt us at the right time. But you know what? Sometimes there's preparation. Sometimes it says we have to suffer a while, and then we're perfected and established and strengthened. You should go look up what those words mean in the original text. They mean repair or adjusted. Sometimes we have to have our attitude adjusted, our focus, convictions adjusted or repaired. You know, the text also uses words that imply steadfast, resolute, in a certain direction. It also means spiritually prepared with knowledge. Understand this. Oftentimes, persecution comes before promotion.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Robert Knight is our guest today. And, friends, if you'd like to get his free weekly columns, his emails, he sends them out on Monday. And all you have to do is send an email to Robert Knight. Knight spelled with a K, K-N-I-G-H-T, Robert Knight, the number 4, at gmail.com. And in the subject line, you can put the words "sign me up," and he'll get you added to the list. And, Bob, your next one coming out next Monday.
Yep. And right now I'm writing about, I hesitate to say, but it's about the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Oh, yes.
Which is the attack dog of the progressive left. And it's turned out the Justice Department has caught them giving $3 million to people in the Ku Klux Klan and a Nazi organization.
Next week,
think about it for a minute. They're funding the very people that they raise money to go against. One
of the people on their hate list is Liberty Counsel, and next week Matt Staver will be on with us talking about that very issue. So your column is very, very timely.
He'll have a field day with it.
Yes. Again, folks, Robert Knight, the number 4, at gmail.com. Just sign me up. Let's go back to the phone lines. Connie is calling from South Dakota. Hi, Connie. You're on the air.
Yes, hello. Yes, I know. I was hearing about the hate mongering for Trump. And then I really need, as Christians, we need to counter that hate mongering and just start praying favor for Trump.
Thank you, Connie, for that reminder. And as we're told in the epistle to Timothy, Paul's letter to Timothy, to pray for those who are in authority over us, that we might lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. And prayer is important. Bob, I'm sure you'd agree, we're very much involved in a spiritual battle here.
Oh, yeah, this goes beyond just policy disputes. You're talking about good versus evil.
Yeah.
And when the Justice Department is finally on the right side of things. We're just finding out that during the Biden years, they were going after pro-life groups, crisis pregnancy centers, and they were also going after or not defending churches and crisis pregnancy centers while defending abortion clinics.
And great disparity in sentencing, too. Yeah.
Huge disparity in sentencing. So if you kill babies, you're a hero in the eyes of the progressives. But if you try to save them, you try to talk mom into having her child, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, this goes beyond just policy disputes. This is good versus evil.
We've got Ken calling from Holman, Wisconsin. Ken, you're on the air.
Brother Jim and Brother Bob, thank you for your program. I believe I saw a program that would light the fire of any of those Christians that sat at home on their duff instead of voting. It was called In Focus, and it had been started. The program was repentance and prayer. And it was just amazing to see how many different Christians in the government were willing to submit to God and repent of their country, their governorship, whatever it was, and pray to God for His help. Boy, I tell you, and everything give thanks. I sent a letter to Donald Trump. I sent a letter to Mike Johnson. I sent a letter to Ron Johnson. I tell you, let's get in it. Let's send some thank yous out and light a fire. If everybody could view that program, I think they would not sit at home.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ken, for the call. We've got Bob in Wisconsin calling. Hi, Bob. You're on the air.
Thank you, Jim, for taking my call. Here's a question for Mr. Knight. I believe that Supreme Court justices at the federal and state level only hold their positions in office for periods of good behavior. Can they not be taken out of the office before their term expires? And I'll listen off the air.
Okay, thank you.
Well, they can all be impeached. That's in the Constitution of the United States and state constitutions. Here's the problem: it just doesn't happen. They don't get impeached. My theory is that so many lawmakers are lawyers themselves who may aspire one day to being judges that they're reluctant to lead an impeachment effort. That would be a black mark against them for the rest of their careers. So that's one reason these justices aren't impeached. The other is that policy differences alone don't justify impeachment under the law. You have to show criminal malfeasance or something like that. So as much as we'd like to remove some people from the bench who really aren't upholding the law, it's kind of a steep climb. And this is why it's so important to get involved at the election time to ensure you get the right people, either appointing the judges or being the judges themselves. Yeah. And I don't know when the next judicial election is in Wisconsin, for instance, but people ought to realize they're
another whole year away.
Putting into place a judicial regime that's going to undo a lot of good.
Let's squeeze in one last call today. Barry in Tennessee, you're on the air.
Yes, the problem and the solution has always been the church. When the church gets back on fire and starts preaching what thus saith the Lord and get out of the entertainment business and stop worrying about dollars and numbers and get back to doing what God called us to do, all this stuff will go away. This is why we have all this mess in this country, because the church isn't being the church.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Bob, we do have responsibilities. I mean, even our citizenship is a stewardship before the Lord.
Yes, it is. And too many pastors sit out this stuff thinking, well, I don't want to be controversial. It might cost me seats in the pews. They also use the excuse of the Johnson Amendment, which is a piece of law Lyndon Johnson put in years ago that sick the IRS on anybody politicizing from the pulpit. And, of course, that was never enforced. And liberal churches for years have had direct candidate endorsements and everything else. It's really time for conservative Bible-believing churches to step up and go ahead and endorse candidates and clearly delineate which party stands for what issue and so forth. I happen to go to a church in Virginia that does just that. In fact, they'll lay it out on a big screen and say, okay, you can vote any way you want, but here's what this party stands for, the Democrats. Mm-hmm. Here's what the Republicans stand for. And by the way, here's what God says about all this.
Wow. Hey, Bob, we're going to have to leave it.
Which way to vote?
We're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. Robert Knight with us today. Again, send an email to robertknight4@gmail.com. Put in the subject line, sign me up, and you'll find his books, critical books. He's got them reduced right now on his site, roberthknight.com. Bob, thanks for joining us today.
Always a pleasure, Jim. God bless you.
And stay on the line for a moment if you would. Friends, thank you so much for joining us here on Crosstalk, coming your way from the VCY American Network.
You've been listening to Crosstalk, via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.